What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Christian Hanna Horror here today, and today we're going to do 5 psychological horror movies I want you guys to watch. You know, some of my favorite subgenres in the horror genre are horror comedy, found footage, and psychological horror movies. Now, you could argue that psychological horror movies could kind of be subjective as opposed to how they affect you personally, and I'll keep that in mind when I made this list. And you know, so this is a great genre. You know, the psychological genre is something that really taps into things that sometimes we don't want to deal with in horror movies. And some of these are going to be, in my list, are going to be some that really have affected me. And I want you guys to check them out. Some of these are going to be big, heavy hitters, but some of them, I don't see enough praise given to them. So I'm here to try to push those movies into everybody's face, so to speak, that watches this video. So why don't we get started? Coming in number 5 for me is a movie I saw as a kid that really disturbed me. It's a movie called Frailty. Frailty is a movie that I've never quite seen attempted in terms of the subject matter that it had. It's really bizarre. A father that is supposedly chasing down evil people on Earth and takes his kids with him. What a bizarre idea for a movie. But it was, I think, attempted well and effective. Frailty is a movie that stuck with me. I haven't seen it in about a year. I bought a DVD of it a year ago, finally found a copy of it and watched it, and it still affected me. But I'll never forget being younger watching that movie and how much it just really disturbed me. The movie stuck in my head for years and years to come. I never forgot the name Frailty. What a really interesting movie. Must be checked out if you haven't seen it. Frailty, guys, is a hard hitter. Coming in at number 4 for me is one of my all-time favorite horror movies. A movie that is a classic, but for some reason it sits below others, and I can understand why, because there were some really great movies back then, but you cannot forget about the classic, the Amityville Horror. You know, here's a movie that just completely defined a genre at the time. I thought the Amityville Horror came at the right time and had the right style, look, and sound to just be a creepy movie that really affects you. The movie comes out of the TV for me. It creeps into the walls of the room when you're watching it. It gets more moodier and moodier and more atmospheric as the movie goes on. The Amityville Horror, I think, is a great movie to watch by yourself late at night. Talk about a movie that genuinely just comes out of the TV. This is one of my favorite psychological horror movies, and there are actually sequels that I love just as much, but the classic first Amityville Horror cannot be denied. I think it's one of the greatest horror movies ever made. The Amityville Horror, check that out. Coming in at number 3, some would probably know that Stephen King would eventually hit this list. My number 3 is 1990's Misery. Misery is a film that I think absolutely captures the essence of foreboding, dread, and psychological torment. Here's Kathy Bates, who's obsessed with this author that she finds helpless after a car wreck on the road and brings them in. But her obsessiveness of the stories he writes and her obsessiveness of him as an author keeps him locked in, breaking his foot so he can't leave. The foreboding sense, you truly feel the pain for the guy in the bed. You are from his perspective in the movie, and that really, really captures you by the heartstrings and makes you just feel absolutely helpless. Kathy Bates has never been scarier before or since. When it comes to Stephen King adaptations, I think that Misery has to be top 5. What a great, great movie. I love it. Coming in at number 2 is some more Stephen King, but one that he's not a fan of. This movie to me is absolutely top 5 greatest horror movies ever made, The Shining. But here's a movie that, the author, Stephen King, is not a fan of, for reasons that I'll never understand. I understand he wrote the book, but to me there is absolutely no denying the magic that Stanley Kubrick got on screen with the performances that he got on screen. I'm no director, I'm no author, but I gotta say, Stephen King, buddy, you gotta lighten up. The Shining is that good. Here's a movie that absolutely just takes you to a world of absolute craziness and mind loss like I've never seen in a horror movie. The character of Jack in this movie absolutely loses his mind, and having the wife and kid there to have to deal with it and witness it and see the breakdown in this hotel is truly a beautifully haunting psychological movie. The Shining can't be denied. Frame by frame, I think it's one of the greatest, and Jack Nicholson's performance in the movie, I think, could beat top 5 greatest performances in a horror movie ever. I think it's that good, and I do think The Shining is truly one of the best movies ever. And the rewatch value for The Shining is through the roof. I think it's really that good. And guys, my number one psychological horror movie I want you to see is a movie that truly haunts me to this day. The Exorcist 3. William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist 3 is originally titled Legion, based on the novel, and the director's cut version of the movie is also called Legion, but The Exorcist 3, for the simple way to put this, I think The Exorcist 3 is one of the most foreboding, psychologically damaging movies I've ever seen in my life. This movie not only matches the merits of The Exorcist, but in my opinion, in some ways surpasses it. I think The Exorcist is also one of the greatest horror movies ever made, but The Exorcist 3 bulldozes so many other movies with no care in the world on how disturbing and mentally damaging it can make you feel. A lot of that credit has to go to Brad Dourif, one of the most insane performances I've ever seen in a horror movie that gets into your blood and makes you feel extremely unsafe. If there's one word for The Exorcist 3, it is unsafe. One of the greatest horror movies ever. I've said that a lot about some of these movies, but I mean it. I think The Exorcist 3 is that well made of a film and that scary of a film. You can watch this in the daytime, you can watch this at night, but The Exorcist 3 will get into your bones, guaranteed. So guys, those are 5 psychological horror movies I want you to watch. What are some of your all-time favorite psychological horror movies? Please let me know in the comment section below. Let's turn down the lights and watch some scary movies. Thank you guys for watching this video. This is Christian Hanna Horror.